Welcome back to the channel. I'm Shane with T2G Custom Products. Today we're here to introduce you to the DIY jig for the onboard retention system. We designed this jig specifically to help you modify your own firearm to work with the T2G Custom Products onboard retention system. I'm going to show you how it's done in this video. If you haven't already seen the other videos showing you how the onboard retention system works, that's a pretty important first step. Go check out this video right here and then come on back and watch this one. Now the process we're going to show you here today is a gunsmithing project. Now it's a simple one, and if you're a DIY type person, you probably are going to be okay with this if you have some basic skills. But if you feel uncomfortable after watching this video in any way, don't start cutting on your gun. Find somebody to help you out, a gunsmith or maybe a friend who's real handy. The onboard retention jig kit includes the following: the jig body itself, a follow guide for the included cutting bit that also serves as a drill bushing guide later in the process. It includes the drill bit for drilling the pin slot, and it includes the lever and the pin that you're going to install in the gun after the slot has been cut. Now, in addition to those kit components, you're going to have to supply a couple of basic items as well. One is a rotary tool. Any rotary tool will likely work, but you want to find a rotary tool that has high amps and a variable speed that lets you go as slow as possible. Slow is your friend when you're cutting polymer. You're also going to want to have a screwdriver, a pair of pliers or vice grips, and a razor blade or X-Acto knife. Now, after watching this video, if you don't feel completely comfortable that you can do this project yourself, find a gunsmith or someone to help you. And if you can't find someone to help you, get a hold of us at T2G Custom Products and we'll find someone to help you out. Let's get started. The onboard jig has an opening in the bottom for routing the slot in the bottom of the trigger guard. The depth gauges built into the side of the jig are marked with 1 circle, 2 circles, and 3 circles. The first depth gauge with 1 circle is where we're going to start. So we will set our bit to that depth. After we've completed a slot at that depth, we'll move on to the second circle for the second depth. That's just a little bit deeper. And we will complete the slot again. That should bring us very, very close to our desired final depth. If necessary, we will then move on to the third and final depth gauge position. We'll talk about that later. We're going to start by inserting the cutting bit in the rotary tool. Then we'll install the follow guide over the top of the bit. You'll notice that the wide part of the follow guide is towards the end. This is the proper position in order for it to follow this slot. We'll now check our depth and make sure that our depth with the follow guide on is right to the bottom of that first slot. You'll notice that that is exactly the right position here now. I'm going to tighten this up good and tight because we don't want that to loosen up and go deeper and mess our gun up. We now have this installed tightly. Our follow guide is setting loosely over the top of the bit. We're ready to start our first cut. Let's talk about cutting speed. Because we're cutting polymer, we want our cutting bit going at a slow speed. If it's going too fast, it's going to generate heat and it's going to do more melting than it does cutting. So whatever range of adjustability your rotary tool has, you're going to want to move it to the lowest position. And then go ahead and turn it on. And that's the speed that I'm going to use right there for most of my cutting. If you're running your rotary tool crazy fast, it's not going to evacuate the chips fast enough and you're going to build up heat, and heat is not your friend. Now before we get started, we're going to again make sure that our follow guide has the wide part towards the end of the cutting bit. If it's turned around like this, that's wrong. Always keep it like this. seeing a lot of orange fluff, that means you're getting into your jig more than you want to. A little bit's okay, a lot's not. Take your time and let the tool do the work. Work your way all the way to the ends. Stop periodically and clear the chips out of the slot and take a look and see how you're doing. Things are coming along just fine. You'll notice I'm getting all the way to the side on both sides of the jig, and I'm getting all the way to the ends on both ends of the jig. It's okay to leave your rotary tool turned off to double check and see if you've gotten all the way to the bottom with that bit. And it feels like I've done pretty well here. We're ready to move on to the second cutting position. That's spot number 2 for a little bit added depth. Again, what we're doing here is we're cutting this in a couple of steps just to make it a little bit safer and a little bit easier to do. So I'm going to loosen up my bit and set it to this second position now. And get it good and tight, and then double check it. Make sure that you're not too deep. This is perfect. So let's go ahead and cut our second pass. And you'll notice that I don't have a lot of damage to the jig. There's a little bit of orange fluff in my sawdust, but not much. Same thing again, just a little bit deeper this time. Remember to stop periodically and clear the chips. Okay, our first 2 passes are done, and we've got the slot pretty well cleaned out. It's time for the next step. Now we're going to take this same guide bushing we were using here, and we're going to install it in the side of the jig and push it all the way to the bottom. Now it's going to be used for drilling the hole through the trigger guard. After we're done drilling it from this side, we'll then go ahead and turn around and insert the guide bushing over here, and we'll drill it from this side afterwards. Using the drill bit that came with the kit, we're going to install it into the guide bushing very carefully, because it's a very fragile bit, and we're going to feel when it touches the bottom. Now we're going to just drill with our fingers by turning this in a clockwise direction, and you're going to be surprised at how fast that drill bit goes through the side of that trigger guard and comes out in the center. Apply just a little bit of pressure downward as you're twisting it. And we're through. Just that easy. Remember, we're only drilling through halfway from each side. Now we're going to back it out in a counterclockwise direction and run it back in again one time just to clean out the hole. All right, our first hole is drilled. Now we're going to pull this bushing out. Sometimes it needs a pliers because you can't hardly get a hold of it. And install it in the other side of the jig. And we're going to do the same thing again. Again, be careful. This is a very fragile little bit. And applying just a little bit of downward pressure. Just keep turning, let the bit do the work. If you try too hard, you're going to break it. I don't recommend using your rotary tool for doing this drilling. It just goes way too fast and gets out of control, and then you break the bit, and that's a problem. See how fast we came through there? We're through. Again, this side we'll back it up and run it through one more time just to clean up the hole, and we'll be done. I think you'll be surprised at how fast that drill bit does its job if you just let it do the work. Now that we have the slot cut and both sides drilled, it's time to take the jig off and see how we did. You'll notice we have not yet used this third depth setting. This third depth setting will only be used if we find that we need it after we pull the jig off. Carefully remove the jig. And that's what your slot's going to look like at this point. You'll notice there's a little bit of flashing around the sides, and that's going to be taken off with our razor blade or X-Acto knife. We're just going to trim it very carefully. Be careful, don't dig into the bottom of the slot with your razor blade, or you may wind up coming out on the inside of your trigger guard, and that is not desirable. We'll do a little bit of cleanup here and be right back. Now notice that by using the jig and the drill guide, our pinholes are perfectly located in the side of that trigger guard. However, you can see that the slot is not quite deep enough in the area where the pin came through. So we're going to make that a little bit deeper in this area here under the pin, so that when we put our latch in there and our pin into the latch will have a little bit of room to move. So we're going to install our jig again and make it a little bit deeper in the area around the pin. Okay, I've reinstalled the jig. It goes right back on, no problems at all. We're going to reset the depth of the bit to the third position to allow us to get just a little bit deeper in the area around the pin. So we'll get it pretty close like that. And then snug it up. And don't forget to check it. And then don't forget, especially on the third slot, don't forget to get it good and tight. Because if it isn't tight and it starts cutting deeper, you're going to have all kinds of problems. All right, we have our guide bushing back on with the big part towards the end again. And now I'm just going to trim just a little bit in the area where the pin is. So from about here to there. I don't need to do the whole thing, just the area around the pin. So now we've made it deeper in the areas around the pin, and I'm going to pull this jig off again and clean it up again, and we should be ready to install our latch. Okay, now that we've got it a little bit deeper in the area around the pin, I'm going to take my drill bit and I'm going to clean out the holes one more time just to make sure that there's not any polymer in the holes from our last procedure. Now that we've got our slot cut and our holes drilled and cleaned out, it's time to take the latch and the pin that come with the kit and install them in the gun. Now I like to take the pin and insert it into the latch first to make sure that there's not any burrs or anything like that from the manufacturing that might be getting in the way to make it more difficult for you while you're trying to install it. This one's just fine. So now I'm going to install the latch and try to line up the hole pretty close with the hole in the gun that we made, and slide it back and forth just a little bit until you're able to get it inserted, just like that. Okay, the pin's all the way to the bottom. The latch is in place. Now we're going to make sure that the latch is functional. The latch moves up and down. You'll notice that it doesn't move very much. It's not supposed to. This surface on the latch should mate up perfectly with the flat surface on the trigger guard right here. And that's what will allow this latch to expel itself from the holster. As you can see, machining polymer just isn't all that difficult. The onboard retention system is unique in the industry, and now you've seen that you can do it yourself. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.